Valeria, thank you so much for joining us on the Remodeling Podcast. We have known each other now for quite a few years, but for anyone who's tuning in and does not know who you are, can you give us a little bit of background on who you are?
Yes, I need to get better at that, this elevator pitch situation. I am a content creator, an entrepreneur, and a mother of three. I've been doing social media for the past 7 years now, and it's been an amazing journey. And that's actually how we met. When we recorded last, it was from my YouTube channel where we did our makeup after drinking. So that was fun.
I love that video, by the way. And I will never forget that moment when I met you because you were one of those few people slash content creators, influencers, whatever you want to call it. I met you in person. You were exactly how you seemed online. But this entire podcast here really is, I want to talk about your entire journey, start to finish, and kind of how you got from point A to point B. But you originally started as a model. So can you take us all the way back to like how you started kind of in that industry?
Yes, definitely. Well, we definitely have different experience in the industry because Emily Donato is a supermodel. But Valeria Lipovetsky, I got introduced to modeling, honestly, not from a place of like, I want to be a model, but more as this is my ticket to a bigger world. So I grew up in Israel, and my mother always was looking for ways to expose me to something different than what was in front of me. And I'm extremely grateful for that. So actually, it was at my bat mitzvah that we had this photographer that were taking pictures of me. He told my mom, hey, she's really good like on photos. Like she really knows how to move, she has something. So that kind of sparked that interest with my mom to see, okay, maybe this is something we explore, which brought me at the age of 15 to go and see elite models back in Israel. And we signed up with them, and I started my career. So the first year was just me going to castings, hearing a lot of no's, and trying to navigate that industry as someone who was completely insecure. I'm also pretty short for a model, so everything was kind of working against me. So the first year was just me learning how to show up. And then at the age of 16, I started getting these opportunities to go to Paris, to travel to Japan, and I started working, and that's how I started my career. A lot of e-com, a lot of catalogs, made great money, which also taught me, the power of making your own money and being independent in terms of finance. And I started traveling and really enjoying all the gifts that modeling gave me. But it was definitely never something that I knew was my calling. Um, I was very fortunate to be able to make a living, but I was waiting for kind of the next thing. And I'm sure a lot of models feel the same.
Absolutely. I mean, regardless, even if you're the most successful model at a young age, people are already like, what are you going to do after this? There's only like a certain amount of time that you can actually do this. But I am curious, so you have this modeling career. What sparked your interest in social media and creating content? Like, how did that kind of evolution happen?
I truly believe that every experience that we have leads us to have tools for the next adventure and the next adventure. And modeling was the first world that gave me the tools to understand how to be on camera and how to find my voice. And actually not finding my voice because no one wanted to hear my voice. It was more like showing up, right?
Yeah.
And learn how to pose and things like that. So that gave me these tools. And then I got married and I got pregnant with my first Jake. And I started thinking, okay, what's next? What's interesting to me? And which brought me to holistic nutrition. I went and studied holistic nutrition, thinking I'm going to open an office, going to see people. And I finished my certification, started seeing probably like 2.5 clients, and hated every single minute of it. And I'm so happy that that was one of those experiences that I didn't push myself to continue doing it. Because I'm a Virgo. So I'm like, I'm going to do it until it gets done perfectly and I'm going to love it. But this specific setup. I just knew like this is not going to do anything for me. So I was looking for a way to merge the tools that I had for modeling with the tools and the knowledge that I had from my nutrition. And that kind of brought me to social media, which was the first platform was YouTube. And that was in 2016, 17. And for me, I was just like on this journey to how do I spread information, and didn't really think too much about it. It was an opportunity to just share what I wanted to share.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like when I look back on those days, even for myself, the early days are so pure because you really are just like trying to connect with people and talk about things that you love and are interested in. But I am curious, you take the step, you start creating content. Was there a pivotal moment where you were like, oh, this is like going really well? Like, this could actually be a thing. This could actually be a business. Because it sounds like it started more organically. And then what clicked there or made you go, I'm going to keep doing this?
Well, first of all, the first, I would say, year, I was just kind of playing around, not being really consistent. I had two little boys at that point, Jake and Ben, so I wasn't taking it seriously. But I did really enjoy the challenge it gave me, even in terms of my own insecurities. Like when you sit down and record yourself and speak and put it online, it takes a lot of courage to show up as yourself and then read the comments and open yourself up to criticism and other people to see you. So I actually was really intrigued by that because I saw this opportunity to develop myself, to become a more confident, aware person. And that's what kept me going in the first year. And I think the pivotal moment happened when one day Gary came home and he had no idea what I was doing, that I was doing this on YouTube, whatever. Was getting so annoyed whenever I get him to take a picture of me for Instagram. He's like, "What are you doing?" I said,
Yeah.
"Don't worry about it. Just take the picture." So he comes home one day and he's like, "Hey, we just got a wire for like $10,000 into our account. Do you know where it's from?" Like I spoke to everybody. No one had no idea like what this is. And at that point, I already started getting sponsorships. I was negotiating them. I was doing everything myself. And I completely forgot to even mention like, "Hey, I have this side hustle happening." So I was like, "Yeah, that was a sponsor that I worked with for my YouTube." He's like, "Excuse me?" So yeah, this is, well, you go and like whatever with your briefcase at this job, whatever. I do stuff at home
Yeah.
and I made some money. So he's like, "Can you just like show me what do you do?" And I shared it with him. I said, "Listen, this is my YouTube. I do a little bit of work on Instagram." And what I love about Gary is that he's a visionary in general, and he really noticed something that I haven't noticed. Where for him, he sat there and he's like, "Hey, this is very valuable media. Like this is the future."
Hmm.
And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure." And he said, "Would you mind me just keeping me, updated on how it's going?" It's because he came from the world of internet marketing.
Hmm.
So I said, "Yeah, sure." So I kind of kept him informed. And based on that, we started seeing this organic growth. But then also Gary brought in this perspective of like, "Hey, this can be a business. Can I come in with you? We can really build this up with my expertise and your talent, and we can really make something out of it." And I said, "Sure, let's go." So that was really the pivotal moment. And from there, we started treating it as a business. We started hiring accordingly. We really built like an infrastructure that wasn't common. And honestly, just starting now slowly to become more common among content creators and influencers. Then now we're here.
I know. I love picturing you kind of negotiating your own deals as like, like how many years ago and doing that yourself. And now I see you as just like this giant business. When you started building, like, who was your first hire? Like, I feel like for a part of me, I would be like, oh my God, like, who is this person going to be? Like, you're the one who really has to manage them. And I was really impressed with you actually when you came to my house and we filmed that video. You were like, telling everyone, like, you do this, you record this, get from this angle. And I was like, right, taking notes, like, oh my gosh, she knows what she's doing. Like, I need to get on this. But when you made your first hire and initially started making it into a business, did you and Gary have this vision that it was going to be what Valeria Inc. is now? Or you were like, let's just add one person who's going to help with XYZ, and then your needs just grew?
Gary saw how it's going to look like, honestly, because I was watching him, I was learning from him. I was learning a lot of skills like delegating things, right? I didn't have all of that because I didn't come from that world. So having someone like him by my side and me being open to learning, which wasn't always the case, but when I was open to learning, I picked up on so many of these skills. But when we sat down and started talking about hiring, it was just a very simple calculation to do. At that point, the business was bringing money. We kept the money in the business. And then he said, okay, well, we need to grow this. You are one person. Where do you spend your day? And I told him, well, I can be in front of the camera for maybe an hour, but then I'll be editing for like 8 hours because that's not one of my skill sets. So for him, he said, okay, editor. Like the first hire would be editor because then you can bring back those 8 hours and you can create more content. You can be in front of the camera, you can be creative. And that's kind of how we build the company on. So once we had the editor, he said, okay, what's next? What do you spend your time on? And I would say, well, I'm actually negotiating, answering emails, sending media kits, invoicing. He's like, okay, next up is this person. So it was a very organic based on what the business was doing and what I was doing and trying to really bring back more time into my life so I can focus on creating content and being creative in general.
Yeah, I think that is so valuable and so important even for myself. Like I'm like which areas of this business do I actually enjoy doing? How do I do more of that and less of the things that I just totally stink at, and like figuring out how to outsource. But it is like a skill in itself to learn how to outsource and find the right people, I feel, to come in and help you. One thing, though, that I found really interesting about you and watching you as a creator, and you've been so relevant for so long, and I feel like I've seen you perform well and be so successful on so many different platforms, and you've brought so many different like point of views and energies to each of them. How do you think about longevity as a creator? Like, because I see you constantly like evolving and you're on a new thing, and now you have your podcast, which I definitely want to talk about. Do you think about it like, oh, I need to do this next thing? Or are you just genuinely following like what you're interested in and what you want to do?
That's a great question. I think that the way I operate and we operate at Valeria Inc., we're very driven by data. So
Mhm.
it's because it's a business, there is a level of like, this is the market, this is the research, this is what people are tuning into, this is how they tune into. So making sure that we are listening to what's going on, and then creating these concepts or videos or creative, things based on that. So that's where I'm able to bring in my creativity forward. And so I would say like the way I split my content strategy is I would do 60, 70% just proven content, and then the other 30 is very much of experimentation. And what's fun with experimentation is that something might pop and then you do it again and again and again, and then it becomes part of your proven concept. So there's just kind of a formula we follow.
Mhm.
And honestly, we're right now working on, I haven't shared it with anyone, we're working right now on this creator academy
Mm.
because I truly believe that if you take out the emotion and all the ego play and all these things that I feel like a lot of creators deal with and slows them down,
Right.
there is a formula to it.
Mhm.
And you have a formula and then you bring on your creativity and you mix it with consistency, and that's where the magic happens. And that's when you have a successful career and you can leave your 9 to 5 and really build something for yourself. So I'm so passionate on teaching and sharing with my peers how to stay relevant, not burn out, continuing loving what you do, because that's another thing I've seen. so many creators come and go because this world, like if you don't manage it properly, your time, your mental health, all these aspects, you just get to a point where you just really hate all of it.
Right.
And it makes
Yeah.
you feel really bad about yourself. And people just drop out and they leave. And I really want to try and bring some structure to this industry with this academy so we can all, benefit from it. So I've been doing so many trial and error on my own personal brand throughout the years, learning what roles are important, how people can contribute, how to do all the things that at this point it's like a flow, I
Right.
guess. So that's to answer your question, the relevancy and all the things is really like a formula that we use based on
Yeah.
all these years.
I find that interesting. I love that you shared kind of your strategy because that was going to be one of my questions and something that I personally struggle with as a creator. It's like, I know things that will do well through and through. And sometimes I'm like, how many times can I do this and say this? But every time it does well. So for you, that's in your
Hmm.
60% bucket. Like, this is tried and true. But then I have things where I'm like, I think this is so cute. I really want to post it, but it doesn't fit in that bucket. Or I like this. I'm interested in it. Like, does this fit into my personal brand? So I guess that's just kind of how you bucket it out. So I love that
Hmm.
you're trying to put structure around that, or almost like a playbook for how creators could step into this industry and be like, there is a way that you can do this and be successful. You're not like out on your own. But I think that this kind of landscape can feel like the Wild West. Even to me, still, I'm like, I don't know. Like, so my question for you is, you kind of shared your strategy, but for someone who's like walking into this industry and brand new, and you look back at like baby Valeria who is stepping into this industry, do you have any words of advice for them? Would you say like, just experiment, try different hats on for size, see what works, or what would you say?
Honestly, yes. I think that so many people talk about having a niche, and I think a niche is
Mm-hmm.
important. But I think that you find your niche through putting a bunch of things out there and see, first of all, what sticks for other people, but also what sticks for you. Because if
Mm-hmm.
something, let's say, if I've decided 7, 8 years ago that my niche would be only nutrition and I would have only done nutrition, I would be gone by this point because I'm not
Mm-hmm.
interested in that anymore. Like it's part of my life, but it's not something that I live and breathe. So the fact that I was experimenting and trying different things and, having different kind of pillars, that really gave me an opportunity to play around to see, okay, this aspect of my content can bring in my, the cerebral content, this part can bring the visual content, this, and all of that also fulfills me as a creator, as a person, as a creative. So it's really about, in the beginning, I feel like you really need to just go out there, have some kind of understanding on what do you want to say and why you want to say it, but very much like playing around, trying different things, and not taking it too seriously. That's another thing. I feel like a lot of people hit this
Mm-hmm.
point where they're like take themselves so seriously that they are not able to maintain this magic about their content.
Yes, I agree. I think also, like with social media, things become trends, and then slowly everyone's content and everyone's feed to me starts to look, first of all, the same, but also a little
Mhm.
sad sometimes because there's seriousness there, which is why sometimes I find myself on TikTok more because there's like that light and fun and authenticity, and you can still like gain inspiration from it. But it is interesting. My next question for you, generally on Valeria Inc. and you as a content creator, is what lights you up the most in terms of the content that you create? Like to me, from consuming your content, it looks like your podcast looks like the thing that you're focusing on and pouring like love and energy into. But I don't know, is it like creating the get ready with me's and the get dressed with me's, which I adore? Or is there an area that lights you up the most?
I love the duality of being playful and silly and fun, which is, part of my personality because it also helps me to continue carrying this like childlike energy. So for me, that's my get ready with me. That's
Mm-hmm.
my outfit of the days. I'm able to show up in that way. And it even requires me to show up in that way. So that honestly helps me escape being an adult sometimes, which is so amazing. So
Mhm.
that's my form of play. And then for the another content that really lights me up and makes me happy and curious and very challenged is the podcast. And
Mhm.
that's why I decided that I want to start a podcast with Not Alone, which is the name of the podcast. It really pushes me to be a better content creator, a better listener. I feel like it really helped me to develop in so many different aspects of my life and my personal self discovery journey. So that is one aspect that I see that I have so much improvement to make, but that also makes me very excited. So I feel like those two, which is the bulk of my content, is what helps me like jump out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, and when you decided that you were going to do the podcast, and I'm asking you this also from like my perspective, was there any part of you that had imposter syndrome kind of jumping into it's a new type of content, different types of conversations that you've ever had before on your platforms, even though I know when during the pandemic you did your IG lives, which to me was like a nod to what was to come with the podcast, which me watching, that was my take on it. But did you have any imposter syndrome walking into this is a new medium, this is a new thing?
I have an imposter syndrome every single day. So I think that that's just something that I learn how to use as a motivation and as something that like gives me power and urgency to learn and get better. So it's not the enemy anymore. It used to be the enemy. I used to
Yeah.
literally be like, when is this done? Like, how can I be confident enough to not deal with these questions and these doubts? But you know what? It will always be part of me, and I'm grateful for that. So yes, it was very scary. The first couple of, not couple, the first season, I was trying so hard that the result was everything that I didn't want, which was such a humbling experience.
Why was it not what you wanted?
Well, I think that something that is both a positive and a negative in my personality is that I overthink a lot of things and I want things to be perfect. And when I take my job very seriously. Yes, I get to play and twirl and, have all this like light content, but I every day I show up. So for
Mhm.
me, when I said, okay, it's time to do a podcast, because I tried a couple of times to start a podcast and I
Hmm.
squashed that idea because I felt like it didn't come from the right place. It came from a place of like, everyone has a podcast. I should have a podcast. But this
Mhm.
time I felt like, oh, I have a calling. Like I know what I want it to be. So when I started with it, I started thinking, okay, I value my listeners and viewers and my audience time so much that I need this content to be substantial, to make them feel something, to be special. And sometimes when you think in that way, you start complicating things and you
True.
start moving away from like the essence of why people listening to you. So
Mhm.
I think I very much did that in the first season. I kind of self sabotaged, but it was an amazing experience. It was a humbling lesson for me. And with season two, which we launched not long ago, I completely showed up like Bear. I was
Mhm.
just there as myself, putting myself in conversations with people that are intriguing to me, that I'm curious about, learning how to be a better communicator, and just really focusing on what really moves the needle rather than like all these other things that you can layer around it to make it feel shiny. So yeah,
Mhm.
so the first that was really hard, and it's still a very humbling experience.
Yeah.
I'm sure for you,
Mhm.
you started this podcast, there's days where you're just like, what the hell was that?
Oh yeah, and I also like I ask you that because not to project onto you like my experience, but I felt like when I decided to do this, I was like, who am I to think that I can create something like this? And then I had some guests on just like you that I was intrigued by that I loved, but this was such a new format for me that I did have guests that honestly like threw me for a loop a little bit and made me go like, oh whoa, I actually like don't know what to do here or what to say, or this is not going the way that I want it to go. And I don't know about for you, I've been a model for so long, I've been creating content for so long. There aren't that many moments like that where I'm like, whoa, like I do not know how to handle this situation. So I was just curious for you going into it. I've had multiple times where I was like, why am I doing this? Like, stick to what you know. So that was like my question around that.
Emily, every single day, every single day. But you know what? This is like, think about it. It's such an amazing opportunity to expand yourself and to, yeah, put yourself in very uncomfortable situations. And trust me, I had interviews and conversations where when it's in person and face to face and you don't know how to navigate it, like your body language, the energy in the room, like, I was like, please, or just, I want the earth to just suck me in.
Yes.
I had all of that, and it taught me very important lessons, to learn how to listen, to let go. This is like a lesson on surrender, because you have to surrender. There are no plans here. You can have a whole, you can do all the research in the world, have all the outlines, and then you sit down and the person just takes you somewhere else. And you got to be here, you got to be present,
I
you got
know.
to listen, and that's very hard to do.
I think it's hard to do too. So I'm glad though you make me feel better and you do an amazing job with your podcast. And I'm sure anyone who's listened does not feel that way. But as a human, it's like humbling in a good way because I'm like, I'm being faced with something that I really need. I'm evolving in the moment, like
Hmm.
learning what to do in these situations. But we've talked about you as a content creator. You have your podcast, but you're also a mother of three adorable boys. I need to know how you balance all of these things and running Valeria Inc. Like, do you have any tangible tips? Like, what do you do? And I can be honest about how I do it on my end too, but I am curious. Like, you run a business and you have so much going on. Like, how?
I know that help is my number one
Mm-hmm.
superpower. Like, I've at this point learned how to ask help. I have very clear boundaries. I'm okay falling short on things that, even though I have the highest expectations of myself, I'm okay being mediocre in certain things. There's some months where I'm not a great mom, on to hit like the things that I needed to hit, but I don't really measure myself like that anymore. So I think that, just first of all, being gentle with myself and giving myself grace has been a huge thing in my life. And then the second thing is really like surrounding yourself with people that can support you.
Mm-hmm.
To me, there's no like magic. There are no other ways to extend myself, where I can be everything to everyone at all times. So
Mm-hmm.
finding people, if it's at home, having nannies or leaning on Gary to help me
Mm-hmm.
out on certain things, pick up certain things that I'm dropping off. Um, at work, I have an amazing company and coworkers that are truly great at their jobs, and they're taking away things from me that I'm not really good at. So
Mm-hmm.
bringing in key people into an organization, if it's the household or the business, has been a huge thing in my life.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And I appreciate you being like honest and transparent about that because I think sometimes that question, people are like not always clear on like how they do it. But it's the same for me. Like, I'm fortunate and it's so wonderful that we have a nanny who helps us like across the board. But also, my hot take is like with children, looking back, if I could speak to like younger me or anyone who's going to have kids, I don't even think I would like have kids or if I couldn't have some version of someone here supporting me, whether that be a parent, like my parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, sisters, is it a nanny? Is it your husband? Someone stays home? Like, if I didn't have that support, like, it's impossible to do it all to me and stay fulfilled at the same time, which brings me kind of to my next question because you're doing all these things, you're a mom. What are your non negotiables in terms of like keeping Valeria right? How do you keep Valeria sane, healthy, happy? Like, what are things you're like, I cannot start my day or be without?
Well, I think it's important to note that those things change based on the season I'm
Mm-hmm.
in. With when I had small kids, like my kids now are 10, 9, and 5. when they were much younger, even the word balance was just a concept that I didn't even know what it looks like, right? So, and that
Mhm.
was okay. I think like if
Mhm.
I could speak to my younger self, I would just let go of all these like definitions and chasing, these balances and whatever it is, because that season is just, that's what it is. It's just chaos, and you're learning how to navigate the chaos and hoping not to fall apart through that. So that was then. Now I feel like my non-negotiables, my kids are older, they're more independent. I have the right people around me to support me. I need solitude. Like, I need a lot of alone time. That's my
Mhm.
secret weapon to everything. I am more intentional with how I move in the world. So I say a lot of no's. I have less friends now. I do less things now. I don't have FOMO. And that to me is my boundaries. And it helps me be more clear on where I'm going and what I want in my life. And I'm so happy that I reached this point in my journey where I'm able to say no and like feel good about it?
Mhm.
So that's honestly those two things. That's what makes me happy.
Yeah, I mean that totally makes sense, like having those boundaries, and I'm the exact same way. I need alone time to recharge, to kind of be creative, to I need all of those things as well. But for you, I feel like on your Instagram you're very open, and I love when you share what books you're reading and all of that about kind of your self-discovery journey. I want you to
Mhm.
talk to me a little bit about what does self-discovery mean to you and what has that journey been like for you?
This journey has been amazing so far, and I feel like I'm the kind of person, my personality is that I will always be on a journey. I have some friends that always like, what are you always seeking, what are you always searching for? Like, just relax. But that's what makes me happy, learning these new aspects about myself, unlearning them. I'm so open to constantly changing, and for me, I never want to just say, oh, this is who I am and this is it. So I think for me, self discovery is just being curious, being open to changing your mind, um, listening to different people from all walks of life doing different things because they leave you with something. And I've expanded my mind in so many different ways through being like that, just curious and open. And I'm just so excited to learn more about it. So that's what it is for me. For me, it's just this constant evolution of the self.
Yeah, I love that and I feel the exact same way. Like I feel excited about change and like continuing to evolve and grow, and sometimes like it just takes a little bit of pain sometimes, or really forcing yourself out of your comfort zone. I am curious because I see you as this person who's constantly evolving and motivated to do so. How does that work in your marriage with Gary? Like, because I feel like you either are like both two changing people, but like if one person's not, like, and one person is, how does he support you in that? Because it's almost like your partner, you married one person, and then it's like
Mhm.
this person is constantly evolving, which is honestly the case. You can either resist it or embrace it, but
That is the $1 million question. I feel like I now have a lot of, not a lot, but I have some friends that, are going through divorces or breakups. And it's for that reason, exactly, right? Because the person that you married is not the same person 5 years in, 10 years in. So it takes a lot of patience.
Mhm.
And I am very, very grateful to have a partner like Gary that is able to step back and let me discover myself every like few years and not getting too involved in that process because he wants me to learn in my own way. And that's difficult to do we have a big age gap. Gary and I are like 18 years apart. So he already been through all of that. So
Right.
for him, he requires a lot of patience and a lot of humility to be able to like step back and, just, okay, you just do your thing. Although I know how it's going to play out and I have the answers, but no, You do you.
Yeah.
And I very much appreciate that. I think that's beautiful. And one of the things that drew me so much to Gary when we met is the fact that he has urgency about his life. He has a sense of
Mm,
urgency, and he's always on the move, and he wants to always see progress. That's something that I very much value and appreciate. And I think that when I met him, I didn't have that in me because I was 20 years old. There's no sense of urgency when you're 20. And, being married to someone like that has helped me to just live in such a different way. So I think that we're both now in this place where we always want to move forward. We want to learn more. We want to, discover things. So it helps us stay connected. Like the morals and
right.
values are the same. And then, yeah,
Hmm.
we can be moving in different speeds, but
Right.
at the end of the day, like we have the same shared values. So I think that helps us connected.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about, because I feel like, you've always really resonated with me in terms of, I feel like you're so open and honest about your mental health and being a mom and kind of the struggles there. What has your relationship been with your mental health? I know you've been honest about having anxiety, and I saw your recent podcast episode with Gabby Bernstein talking about it. So, can you share a little bit, first of all, maybe why did you have Gabby on? Was it because you felt like this was something that you could talk about with her and your mental health?
Um, I think that this whole aspect of mental health and anxiety and stuff became a bit gimmicky, to be honest with you. So if I before used to talk about it, um, very openly, I've realized that what I'm experiencing is just a basic like human experience. Yes, I have my stress. Yes, I have my anxiety based on just like how life is and how busy it is. But it's all, I honestly look at them as gifts because it means that I care. I care so
Hmm.
much that I get anxious and that I get stressed. It's a privilege to care this much.
Hmm.
So I I navigated in the ways that I've learned work for me. If it's again the solitude, the more boundaries, the meditations, the reading, kind of going into the things that make me give me the comfort and support is what I do. The reason why I wanted to have Gabby is because I really liked her ways of reframing things like control and stress, because that's what I think we need. If you ask me,
Hmm.
I think that we need, rather than trying to focusing on like all the anxiety and stress that is around us, is actually learning how to use it, and to learn how to identify it properly and to have the tools to kind of persevere. So
Hmm.
so I feel like that's kind of where I'm at when it comes to mental health.
Your take resonates with me in the sense that, and I actually have this conversation with my husband sometimes too. I mean, I think the volume on my anxiety is maybe turned up a little bit, like meaning than the average Joe. I'll give myself that. But sometimes the way my husband and I kind of reframe it, or what he'll say to me, is like, anxiety is not always this horrible, terrible thing. Sometimes it motivates us. Like, for
Mm,
example, it's like if you don't have anxiety about packing for your trip tomorrow, your flight at 5 a.m., then you probably wouldn't be packing right now. Like there is a way to reframe it to be like, this is giving me like a motivation, a drive, a need, an urgency to do something. But
mhm.
for me, sometimes it's like, okay, that is kind of always humming for me. And I'm trying to just turn it down like a tiny bit because like no one's dying here. Like everything is okay. But
Yeah.
I hear you that it's not the end all be all evil. And it is kind of a part of the human experience.
You're also a mother to two young children. Like
Yes.
that's just the I feel like that's the background music in general, the anxiety those like
Yes.
years.
And sometimes I'm like, I don't know if this is like just my experience or is it just because I do have these small kids and it's just complete and total chaos. And like, we didn't even really get to touch on this, but I did want to ask you like, you started Valeria Inc. in your content journey and almost a new career when you had like tiny children. So, how did you find your identity? Like as a mother and this identity here, like, did you feel confused while doing both of those simultaneously?
Yes, I felt confused because I wanted to be a rock star at both at the same time. And it was also during like the girl boss era. So I was like, I
Yes.
can do this. And that was just like, what the hell was I thinking? Again, that's why I think we accelerated the hiring process. So that was a big thing. But also, yeah, I navigated my identity as a mother, and I navigated my identity as a content creator, and who am I presenting to the world? Like there's so many things happening at the same
Hmm.
time, and it was very confusing. So it took a while. I would say that I only recently started to be like, okay, this is me as a mother. This is my role
Right.
here. This is my role here. This is how I show up here. And it's still going to be changing as I get older and as my kids get older. And so it's just again this kind of like not being attached to anything has helped me tremendously.
Hmm.
But I was definitely trying to do too much and be everything too soon.
Yeah, like sometimes with certain things, like even after I had the kids, I mean, I've only been a mom for like a little over 2 years, but sometimes I'm like, just a little bit of time has to pass for you to like gain a little perspective and be able to
Mhm.
like, but you just kind of like the only way out is through with like motherhood and like the identity side. I'm still in it though, by the way. I'm like very much in it. But yeah, it's an ongoing evolution and journey, which leads me to my next question and the question I ask all of my guests, because this is the remodeling podcast. What is the biggest remodel that you are going through right now? It can be personally, professionally, physically, something that's like changing that you're working on or waiting for something to change.
You know what? I think that's something that has been happening for me in the past 2 years since I moved from Canada to the US, is just the mind expansion and the the breaking down the limited beliefs. Like I had a lot of limiting beliefs because when you are only able to see as far as you can, what's in front of you, you don't really know what's really out there. So I feel
Mm-hmm.
like this change in environment, living in a different country, the hustle in America in general, just really opened up my mind to the possibilities, the opportunities, the fact that everything is possible. I didn't have that mindset before.
Hmm.
So I think that has been a big change for me and kind of like a remodeling of my whole psyche when it
Yeah.
comes to that.
That's a good one. That's really interesting. Amazing. My next question for you, and we're down to our final questions, is what is next for you and your community? Do you have any podcast episodes or guests coming up that we need to tune into? What's next?
Oh my God, so much. Well, first of all, I need to set up this new studio space because my brain is like buzzing. But I think for me, it's just continuing to, getting better at my craft and to continue evolving um, my brand and just myself as a personality. That's always been at the forefront, and really thinking about the value that I bring forward. I think that for me, being a content creator is kind of like a calling. I have a mission here, and I want to share it with the world. And just continuing to really getting clear on that is something that's always on my mind. I'm very excited for this creator academy that we're building
Hmm.
because I just really want to create a playbook for other people so they can show up and have their own calling and bring their own
Hmm.
messaging out there. And yes, it's just being present like where my head is at so I can
Nice.
enjoy all the things that are happening around me.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Tell us, where can everyone find you?
You can find me on all the platforms, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, Valeria Inc. And then you can listen to Not Alone. I have a new episode coming out every week. Some amazing guests, amazing conversations, very vulnerable, often humbling. And it's been a wonderful journey. But that is available anywhere you listen to podcasts too. And that's it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Emily. I appreciate it.